Hello and welcome back to Shocking Facts. Today, we are delving into one of the most perplexing and terrifying criminal sagas in modern Mexican history. A 4-year reign of terror that gripped Mexico City, leaving dozens of elderly women dead and police baffled. The killer earned the terrifying nickname La Mataviejitas, the old lady killer. For years, investigators hunted a predator they assumed was a man, possibly a transvestite, due to conflicting witness reports. But the shocking truth, revealed on a cold January day, shattered all expectations. The serial killer was not a man in disguise, but a broad-shouldered, 48-year-old single mother, and, perhaps most surprisingly of all, a former professional masked wrestler known in the ring as La Dama del Silencio, or the Silent Lady. This is the chilling story of Juana Barraza, a woman whose hidden rage led her to murder at least 11, and possibly as many as 49, unsuspecting women in a crime spree motivated by deep, dark family resentment. The murders began in the late 1990s, though the first confirmed killing later attributed to the Mataviejitas was dated to November 2003. The pattern was both consistent and deeply disturbing. The victims were almost exclusively women aged 60 or over, living alone in the capital. The modus operandi was calculated and cruel. The killer would gain the trust of her vulnerable victims by posing as a social worker or a government official, claiming to offer information about benefits or signing them up for welfare programs. Once inside their homes, the pleasant facade would shatter. The victims were bludgeoned or, more commonly, strangled using whatever was at hand. Phone cables, scarves, curtains cords, or sometimes even women's tights. After the brutal attack, the killer would rob the victim, though police noted that sometimes only symbolic trophies like small ornaments or religious items were taken. For years, the authorities were heavily criticized by the media for dismissing the mounting evidence of a serial killer at work, chalking it up to media sensationalism, as late as the summer of 2005. Yet, by the time police finally took the threat seriously, the estimated number of victims was staggering, ranging anywhere from 24 to almost 50 deaths. Mexico City was living in fear, and the killer seemed untouchable. The investigation into La Mataviejitas was plagued by contradictory evidence, misdirection, and embarrassing public blunders. Early on, Bernardo Peniz, the chief prosecutor, profiled the killer as having a brilliant mind, being quite clever and careless, but the visual profile proved to be the greatest obstacle. Witnesses at various murder scenes described a large, masculine-looking person wearing women's clothing, sometimes a red blouse. This conflicting testimony led police down a completely wrong path. They suspected the killer was a man, possibly a transvestite who used feminine attire to gain access to the victims' apartments. This misdirection led to what one journalist called a ham-fisted and unproductive swoop on Mexico City's transvestite prostitutes, costing the investigation precious time and drawing heavy public criticism. At one point, police even hypothesized that 2 killers might be involved due to the sheer number of murders and the different descriptions. Adding to the complexity was an odd coincidence. At least 3 of the victims owned a print of the French artist Jean-Baptiste Boy's painting, Boy in Red Waistcoat. Police suspected the killer might be targeting specific items or people, adding yet another layer of confusion to a hunt already struggling to focus. The entire city, including the police force, was convinced they were looking for a male predator. They were wrong. The person behind the killings was Juana Barraza, born in 1958 in Hidalgo, a rural area north of Mexico City. Barraza's childhood was a foundation of trauma and rage. Her mother was an alcoholic who reportedly subjected her to horrific neglect, even going so far as to allegedly exchange the 12-year-old Juana for just 3 beers to a man who then repeatedly abused her. Juana, who never fully learned to read or write beyond her name, grew up harboring an immense, festering resentment toward her mother for allowing the abuse. She supported her own 4 children through domestic work, street vending, and petty theft. But her deep-seated rage found an outlet in a bizarre passion: lucha libre, the spectacle of Mexican masked wrestling. Barraza was a devout fan, describing herself as a Rudo to the core, a wrestling villain. She occasionally fought on the amateur circuit under the ring name La Dama del Silencio, the Silent Lady. The irony was chilling. The Silent Lady in the ring was, according to criminologists, targeting elderly women out of a profound and misplaced desire to release the rage she held against the first woman who had betrayed her, her mother. This personal motive, coupled with the cover afforded by her unremarkable, broad-shouldered physique, allowed her to continue her spree undetected for years. The Mataviejitas' terrifying run came to an abrupt end on January 25, 2006, at the home of Ana Maria de los Reyes Alfaro, 82, who lived in the Venustiano Carranza borough. Following her usual deceitful pattern, Barraza gained entry to Alfaro's house, possibly posing as a social worker, a nurse, or simply asking for a glass of water. Once inside, she spotted a stethoscope lying on a living room table and used it to brutally strangle her victim. However, fate intervened. Just as Barraza was hurrying from the murder scene, a lodger who lived at Alfaro's residence arrived home. He immediately saw the disheveled woman fleeing and, stumbling upon the scene of the crime, raised the alarm. Passing police officers were flagged down and pursued Barraza, arresting her shortly afterward. The surprise was overwhelming. The suspect was female. When detained, the police found Barraza to be carrying incriminating evidence: a stethoscope, pension forms, and a social worker's identification card, the very tools of her deception. She closely resembled the composite profile made by police, with her short-cropped hair and facial mold, leading authorities to admit that the broad-shouldered former wrestler fit the description better than the male transvestites they had previously targeted. Fingerprint evidence quickly linked Barraza to at least 10 other murders. She immediately confessed to the murder of Alfaro but denied involvement in the remaining killings, telling police, "I only killed one little old lady, not the others. It isn't right to pin the others on me." Juana Barraza was tried in the spring of 2008. The prosecution, confident in the mounting fingerprint evidence, alleged she was responsible for as many as 40 deaths. Barraza maintained her confession to only the Alfaro murder, stating her motive was the lingering resentment against her mother. On March 31, 2008, Barraza was found guilty on 16 charges of murder and aggravated burglary, including 11 separate counts of murder. She was sentenced to a staggering 759 years in prison. While the number sounds astronomical, under Mexican law, multiple sentences are typically served concurrently, and the maximum sentence is 60 years. Regardless, Juana Barraza, the Silent Lady and Mataviejitas, will most likely spend the rest of her life behind bars. The case of Juana Barraza remains a shocking anomaly in the world of true crime. A former wrestler turned prolific serial killer, motivated by deeply personal trauma. If you want to see more terrifying true crime stories, please like and subscribe to channel.